Have you ever been overtaken on an American interstate by a Volvo VNL running wide open, stacks gleaming, and thought to yourself, wait, is that a Swedish truck? Because if you have spent any time on American highways in the last 2 decades, you have seen more Volvos than you probably realized. Not the luxury sedans, not the boxy family wagons that built the brand's safety reputation in the 1970s. The big ones, the 18-wheelers. The long-haul semi-trucks wearing the Volvo name on a grille that is rolling freight across the same interstates as Peterbilt, Kenworth, and Freightliner. And if that seems surprising, if the idea of a Swedish truck company competing at the highest level of the American heavy trucking market sounds like something that should not quite work, then you do not yet know the full story of how Volvo got here. And that story is one of the most interesting corporate and engineering journeys in the entire history of the trucking industry, because Volvo did not sneak into the American market through a side door. They did not find a niche and quietly occupy it. They came in through a series of bold acquisitions, made deliberate decisions about what American drivers actually needed, built manufacturing infrastructure on American soil, and constructed a dealer and service network that today rivals the domestic brands in coverage and capability. They did not ask permission to compete in America. They just competed. And the results speak for themselves in a way that the numbers make very hard to argue with. So today, we are getting into the full story. How a Swedish company that started building trucks in Gothenburg became one of the dominant forces in American heavy trucking. What they did differently, what they did the same, and what their presence on American roads tells us about where the global trucking industry is heading. Stick around, because this one goes deep. Hey everyone, Travis Walker here, Titan Haulers, just pulled into my yard outside Amarillo after a run up through Colorado and Wyoming. Before I get the Peterbilt backed into the shop for a service, I want to sit down and talk about something that comes up constantly when I mention the trucks I have driven over the years. Volvo. Now I have put serious miles on a Volvo VNL. Not just a test drive, not just a review unit for the channel. I ran one for an extended period on real routes, real loads, real conditions. And what I found surprised me in ways I did not expect going in. I came from Peterbilt country. I grew up around American iron. My first instinct when someone mentioned a Swedish truck on American highways was the same skepticism a lot of drivers in my world had. But 20 years in this industry has taught me that skepticism without data is just bias wearing a work shirt. So tonight we are looking at the data, the history, and the real-world performance. Let us get into it. Most people who know Volvo Trucks in America assume the story started relatively recently, sometime in the 1990s or 2000s, when global brands started appearing in markets they had not previously occupied. But the real roots of Volvo's American presence go back further than that, and they run through a corporate acquisition that fundamentally changed the competitive landscape of American heavy trucking in ways the industry is still living with today. The critical moment came in 1981, when Volvo acquired the White Motor Corporation's truck operations, which included the White, Autocar, and Western Star brands. White Motor Corporation had been a significant player in American trucking for decades, and its dealer network, its manufacturing infrastructure, and its established customer relationships represented exactly the kind of American foothold that a European manufacturer entering the market from scratch would have taken years to build independently. That acquisition gave Volvo something that money alone cannot buy: quickly, legitimacy. An American heritage to stand on, a network of dealers and customers who already understood what a truck needed to be in North American operating conditions, and manufacturing capacity on American soil that allowed Volvo to produce trucks for the American market without the logistics costs and currency risks of importing from Sweden. The brand that emerged from this foundation went through several iterations over the following decade, operating under the White GMC and then Volvo White names as the company worked out exactly how to position itself in a market that was deeply attached to its existing brands. It was not a smooth or simple process. Cultural integration of a European manufacturer with an American truck company is not something that happens without friction. And the early years of Volvo's American operation had plenty of it. But the foundation was there. And Volvo, with the patience and strategic discipline that has characterized their global expansion, kept building on it. If the 1981 White purchase was the opening move, the acquisition that truly established Volvo as a major force in American trucking came in 2001, when Volvo completed its purchase of Mack trucks. And this one landed differently, because Mack is not just a truck brand in America. It is a cultural institution with a history going back to 1900, a reputation for toughness built on over a century of American roads, and a customer base that is among the most loyal in any commercial vehicle market anywhere in the world. Buying Mack gave Volvo something that the White acquisition could not fully provide. It gave them an American brand with genuine emotional resonance. Truckers who would never consider buying a truck with a Swedish name on the hood would absolutely buy a Mack, and had been doing so for generations. The bulldog on the hood meant something that a corporate rebrand could never replicate, and Volvo was smart enough to recognize that and preserve it. The strategic logic of running Volvo and Mack as separate, distinct brands under the same corporate ownership is one of the more interesting decisions in the history of commercial vehicle manufacturing. Rather than merging the brands, rationalizing the product lines, and presenting a unified face to the market, Volvo kept Mack as Mack. Different styling, different identity, different customer positioning, but sharing engineering platforms, powertrains, and manufacturing resources underneath the surface in ways that reduce costs without diluting either brand. This two-brand strategy allowed Volvo to address different segments of the American market simultaneously. The Volvo VNL appealed to fleet operators and drivers who made decisions based on technology, fuel economy, and driver comfort, a customer base that was growing as the economics of trucking became more sophisticated. The Mack appealed to vocational customers, construction, refuse, concrete, heavy haul where the brand's reputation for toughness, and the dealer network's expertise in severe duty applications were the primary purchase drivers. Together, the two brands covered the American market in a way that neither could have managed alone. And the combined market share of Volvo and Mack in the North American heavy truck segment is a number that the purely domestic brands have to take seriously. Let us talk about the truck itself, because the corporate strategy only gets you so far. At some point, the vehicle has to deliver on the road, and the Volvo VNL's success in America is ultimately a story about a truck that earned its market share by performing well in conditions that American drivers actually encounter. The VNL arrived in its modern form in the mid-1990s, built specifically for the North American market rather than adapted from a European platform. This distinction matters enormously. European trucks and American trucks face fundamentally different operating environments, as Travis covered in the Scania video on this channel. And a truck designed for European roads and regulations requires significant rethinking to work properly in American conditions. Volvo made that rethinking a priority. The VNL was designed around American highway speeds, American payload configurations, American driver expectations about interior space and comfort, and American operating conditions, including the long, straight, high-speed interstate runs that define long-haul freight in this country. The cab is not a European cabover. It is a conventional configuration with a prominent hood, designed to meet the aesthetic expectations of American drivers who associate the long-nosed design with serious professional equipment. The powertrain story is central to the VNL's success. Volvo developed their D-Series engines, culminating in the current D13 and D11, specifically for North American duty cycles, working in concert with their I-Shift automated manual transmission to deliver a drivetrain package that consistently performs well in independent fuel economy comparisons. The D13 in particular has developed a strong reputation among fleet operators for reliability, fuel efficiency, and total cost of ownership. It is not a transplanted European engine struggling to meet American conditions. It is a purpose-developed powertrain that has accumulated millions of miles of North American operating data and been refined continuously on the basis of that data. The difference between an engine designed for the application and one adapted to it shows up in exactly the metrics that professional fleet managers measure most carefully. Here's a piece of the Volvo story that deserves specific attention because it had an influence on the American trucking industry that went well beyond Volvo's own market share. The I-Shift automated manual transmission, which Volvo introduced to the North American market in the early 2000s, was one of the first AMTs to gain genuine traction with American fleet operators and drivers, and its success helped break down the resistance to automated transmissions that had kept the technology on the margins of the American market for years. As Travis covered in the automated transmission video on this channel, the American trucking industry had a deep and genuine attachment to manual transmissions that went beyond mere habit. The skill of running an 18-speed was a professional identity marker, and early automated transmissions had a poor enough track record in heavy-duty applications that the skepticism was grounded in real experience rather than just cultural conservatism. The I-Shift changed the conversation because it worked. Fleet operators who specified it reported real fuel economy improvements, measurable reductions in drivetrain damage from improper shifting, and positive feedback from drivers who had been skeptical going in. The data was hard to ignore, and in an industry that ultimately makes decisions on economics, data that shows up clearly in the operating cost numbers gets attention, regardless of how it conflicts with existing preferences. Volvo's willingness to push the I-shift into the American market, at a time when AMTs were still viewed with deep suspicion by a significant portion of the industry, was a calculated risk that paid off, both for their own market position and for the broader adoption of automated transmissions across the industry. The Eaton Endurant, the Detroit DT12, and the other AMTs that now dominate new truck specifications in North America all came to market in an environment that Volvo's I-shift had helped prepare. Here's the detail that separates genuine market commitment from opportunistic brand positioning. Volvo built a truck manufacturing plant in Dublin, Virginia in 2009, expanding and modernizing a facility that has since become one of the most sophisticated commercial vehicle manufacturing operations in North America. The Dublin plant produces Volvo VNL and VHD trucks for the North American market, employing thousands of workers and representing a capital investment that signals something important about Volvo's intentions in the American market. You do not build a manufacturing facility of that scale and capability if you're testing the waters or maintaining an optionality position. You build it when you have decided that America is a core market, not a secondary one, and that you're going to compete for the long term. The manufacturing localization also has practical benefits beyond the commitment signal. Trucks built in Virginia for American customers have shorter supply chains, faster production to delivery timelines, and better responsiveness to market demand fluctuations than imported vehicles. The American content in a Virginia-built Volvo VNL, measured by the origin of its components and the location of its assembly, meets thresholds that matter for certain government fleet procurement programs. And the jobs the facility creates generate a political and community goodwill that is not irrelevant in a market where regulatory and policy environments can affect commercial vehicle operations significantly. Travis will tell you something that 2 decades of operating trucks has made abundantly clear. The truck you buy is only as good as the service network behind it. A technologically excellent truck with a thin service network is a liability on a long route through unfamiliar territory. A good truck with a dense, capable service network is a reliable business asset. Volvo has invested consistently in their North American dealer and service network, and the result today is a coverage that allows a Volvo driver to find qualified service within a manageable distance on virtually any significant freight corridor in the continental United States and Canada. The Volvo Action Service, their 24-hour roadside assistance and service coordination program, provides a single point of contact for drivers dealing with breakdowns, routing them to the nearest qualified facility, and coordinating parts availability in ways that minimize downtime. The Volvo Impact Parts System, which gives dealers and owner-operators access to genuine parts through an integrated ordering and delivery network, addresses one of the historical concerns about non-domestic brands in the American market. The days when choosing a European truck in America meant accepting inferior parts availability compared to domestic brands are largely over for Volvo, because the investment in parts logistics infrastructure has been substantial and sustained. For Travis, running a Volvo VNL on a real commercial route means having confidence that a mechanical issue on a Wyoming highway or a Kansas truck stop is a manageable problem rather than a potential disaster. That confidence is not built by the truck alone, it is built by the network behind it, and Volvo has done the work to make that network genuine rather than nominal. Let us bring in some market data, because the story of how Volvo dominated American roads is ultimately a story that the market share numbers tell more clearly than any narrative. Volvo Trucks, including the Mack brand, consistently captures between 25 and 30% of the North American Class 8 truck market in recent years. That means roughly 1 in 4 heavy trucks sold in America carries a Volvo corporate badge, either on the hood as a Volvo or on the Bulldog as a Mack. In a market that includes Peterbilt, Kenworth, Freightliner, International, and Western Star. That is a remarkable achievement for a company that was essentially absent from American highways before 1981. The VNL specifically has become one of the best-selling Class 8 trucks in North America, competing directly and successfully against the Peterbilt 579, the Kenworth T680, and the Freightliner Cascadia for the business of the large fleets and sophisticated owner-operators who drive the volume end of the market. In fuel economy comparisons, in total cost of ownership analyses, and in driver satisfaction surveys, the VNL consistently scores in the top tier, not as a foreign alternative to domestic options, but as a genuine competitor that earns its results on merit. The resale value of used Volvo VNLs in the American market is strong. which is the market's ultimate verdict on a truck's real-world worth. Residual value is what happens when thousands of individual buyers independently assess what they are willing to pay for a used truck, and strong residuals reflect accumulated trust that cannot be manufactured through marketing. Here's the part of the story that no market share number or specification sheet can tell. What it is actually like to spend real time in a Volvo VNL, on real routes, under real conditions, as assessed by someone with 20 years of comparative experience in American trucks. Travis ran the VNL on routes through Texas, Colorado, and Wyoming. Varied terrain, varied conditions, the kind of operating environment that tests a truck across its full capability range rather than flattering it in ideal conditions. What he found was a truck that delivered on its efficiency claims in a way that showed up clearly in fuel consumption across the run. The D13 and I shift combination is genuinely well sorted, and the integration between the engine management and the transmission control produces a drivetrain that operates as a unified system in a way that a separately sourced engine and transmission do not always achieve. The interior quality of the VNL surprised him, not because he expected it to be poor, but because the quality of the driving position, the control layout, the noise insulation, and the overall ergonomics reflected a level of investment in driver experience that he had not fully anticipated from the specification sheet. European manufacturers have been engineering driver comfort as a serious performance variable for longer than American manufacturers, and that heritage shows in the cab environment, the handling characteristics on mountain terrain, specifically in the grades through Colorado that Travis knows well from years of running that corridor, were competent and confidence-inspiring. The engine braking and the transmission's behavior on long descents reflected the kind of mountain tuning that a manufacturer does when they have spent real time understanding how their truck performs in those specific conditions. His honest verdict after extended seat time is the same one that the market data reflects. The Volvo VNL is a serious truck, not a curiosity, not a compromise, not a foreign alternative for drivers who cannot get what they really want. A serious, capable, well-engineered commercial vehicle that earns its place on American roads every single day. Here is a dimension of Volvo's American story that does not get nearly enough attention in the conversations that focus on market share numbers and acquisition history. The technology race, because while the cultural narrative around Volvo in America tends to center on the corporate journey, the acquisitions, the manufacturing investments, and the brand positioning, the deeper story of why Volvo has held and grown its market share in recent years is a technology story. And it is one where a Swedish company with a global research and development budget is competing in ways that purely domestic manufacturers are finding increasingly difficult to match. Start with the Fuel Economy Development Program, because this is where Volvo has invested most visibly and most effectively. The Supertruck program, a Department of Energy initiative that challenged commercial vehicle manufacturers to demonstrate significant improvements in freight efficiency, saw Volvo achieve a freight efficiency improvement of over 100% compared to a 2009 baseline truck in their Supertruck demonstration vehicle. That number is not a marketing claim. It is a verified result from a federally administered technology demonstration program, and it reflects the depth of engineering investment that Volvo has made in understanding every variable that affects how efficiently a heavy truck moves freight down a highway. The technologies developed in the Supertruck program are not all in production yet, but they feed directly into the development pipeline that produces the next generation of VNL variants. Aerodynamic improvements, waste heat recovery systems that capture energy from the exhaust stream and convert it into usable power, advanced tire systems, and integrated powertrain management software that treats the engine, transmission, and drivetrain as a single optimized system rather than a collection of separately engineered components. These are not incremental improvements. They are the kind of step-change efficiency gains that redefine what fleet operators expect from a new truck purchase. The connectivity and telematics platform that Volvo has developed, marketed under the Volvo Connect umbrella, gives fleet operators and owner-operators real-time visibility into vehicle performance, maintenance needs, fuel consumption, and driver behavior in ways that allow proactive management rather than reactive response. A fleet manager running 200 Volvo VNLs can see which trucks are trending toward a maintenance event before that event becomes a breakdown, which drivers are operating in ways that cost fuel, and which routes are producing the expected efficiency results versus which ones are underperforming against the model. For large fleets operating on thin margins, that data visibility is not a convenience feature. It is a competitive advantage that translates directly into lower operating costs and better asset utilization. And Volvo's investment in the software and connectivity infrastructure behind it reflects an understanding that the modern truck is not just a mechanical vehicle. It is a data-generating asset in a networked fleet management system. And the value of the hardware depends increasingly on the quality of the software and services ecosystem surrounding it. Here's where Volvo's technology investment points towards something bigger than the current generation of trucks, and where their global scale gives them a research and development capability that shapes what American trucking will look like over the next decade. Volvo has been one of the most active commercial vehicle manufacturers in autonomous truck development through both internal programs and strategic partnerships. Their involvement with Aurora Innovation, one of the leading autonomous trucking technology companies in North America, positions them to integrate autonomous driving capability into the VNL platform as the technology matures and the regulatory environment evolves to permit wider deployment. The autonomous trucking timeline has proven more challenging than early predictions suggested, as the complexity of real-world highway conditions and the regulatory frameworks required to enable commercial autonomous operation have both proven harder to navigate than the most optimistic forecasts assumed. But Volvo's position in this space, with deep integration into the technology development rather than a passive wait-and-see approach, means they are positioned to move quickly when the conditions are right rather than scrambling to catch up to a technology that developed without them. The electrification story is similarly positioned. Volvo has been producing electric trucks for urban and regional applications in Europe for several years, accumulating real-world operating data on electric commercial vehicle performance, battery management, charging infrastructure, and total cost of ownership in conditions that are closer to the commercial reality of electrification than any test program can replicate. That operational experience feeds directly into the development of North American electric truck products that are already in limited commercial deployment and expanding. The Volvo VNL Electric, currently in customer trials in North America, represents the first serious attempt to bring battery electric technology to the long-haul segment of the American truck market. The range limitations of current battery technology mean it is not yet a replacement for diesel in true long-haul applications, but the performance in regional and medium-haul duty cycles is competitive in ways that are accelerating fleet adoption faster than skeptics predicted. Here's a connection that is worth drawing explicitly because it explains why Volvo's technology investments in driver assistance, automated transmissions, and vehicle connectivity have generated market returns faster than they might have in a different labor environment. The chronic driver shortage that American trucking has been managing for years has changed the calculus around driver assist technology in a way that accelerates adoption. Fleets that are struggling to recruit and retain drivers are acutely interested in anything that makes the driving experience less demanding, more accessible to a wider range of potential recruits, and more supportive of the driver's well-being and performance over a long career. Volvo's driver performance system, which coaches drivers on fuel-efficient operation and provides feedback that helps less experienced drivers develop better habits faster, directly addresses the productivity gap between veteran drivers and new entrants that the shortage has widened. The I-Shift's elimination of the manual transmission skill barrier has opened the Volvo to drivers who might have been excluded from the profession by that barrier. And the cab ergonomics and comfort features that Volvo has consistently invested in contribute to the driver retention picture in ways that fleet operators who have tracked turnover data have started to quantify. The driver shortage made Volvo's technology bets relevant to a wider range of buyers than they would have been in a fully staffed industry. And in business, being right at the right time is almost as important as being right. So how did Volvo dominate American roads? The honest answer is that they did it the hard way. Strategic acquisitions that gave them American roots, a purpose-built product designed for American conditions rather than adapted from European platforms, manufacturing investment that demonstrated long-term commitment, service network development that addressed the legitimate concern about parts and support availability, and a drivetrain package that delivered on its efficiency claims in ways that showed up in the metrics that professional operators actually measure. None of it happened quickly. The journey from the White Motor acquisition in 1981 to a 25% market share in North American Class 8 trucks spans 4 decades of consistent effort, investment, and adaptation. There were difficult years. There were products that did not fully deliver. There were cultural clashes between Swedish corporate philosophy and American trucking culture that took time and patience to navigate. But the direction was always forward. And the lesson for anyone watching the global trucking industry is the same one that keeps emerging from every story on this channel. The best truck is the one that fits the road, the routes, the regulations, and the real-world operating conditions of the market it serves. Volvo figured out what American roads actually needed, built a truck that delivered it, and backed that truck with the infrastructure and the service commitment that turns a good product into a durable market position. The Swedish truck giant is not a visitor on American highways. It has not been for a long time. It is a permanent resident that earned its place mile by mile, load by load, and customer by customer over 4 decades of doing the work. What is your experience with Volvo trucks on American roads, and would you run one? Drop it in the comments below. We genuinely want to know. Thanks for watching Titan Haulers, and remember to subscribe for much more.